My brother's darkest secret, Part 2. The weight of betrayal settled in my gut like a stone. Claire's confession, Emily's taunts, and Liam's smug expression all clashed inside my head. This wasn't just a careless mistake. This was deliberate. Claire squeezed my hand. "Alex, what do we do?" I had no answer. Not yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't letting Liam walk away from this unscathed. The confrontation. I pushed through the crowd, ignoring the laughter, the clinking glasses, the guests oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. When I reached Liam, I grabbed his arm and pulled him into the nearest empty hallway. "All right, Liam, enough games. What the hell was that? Toast about?" He grinned, straightening his cuffs. "Relax, big brother. Just sharing a little truth." Truth? I took a step closer, my voice low. "The truth is, you tried to ruin my wedding. You brought my ex here, made Claire uncomfortable, and now you're acting like this is all some joke." Liam chuckled, but there was no humor in it. "You don't get it, do you? It's always been you, Alex. The golden boy, the one who gets everything without even trying." I clenched my fists. "This isn't about me. It's about Claire. You had no right." "No right?" He scoffed. "You never even asked how I felt about her. You never noticed how I looked at her. You didn't even care." "Because it wasn't your place," I snapped. "She was never yours to have." Liam's smirk faded. A dark flicker crossed his face. "And Emily?" he asked. I stiffened. "Yeah," he said, stepping closer. "I knew bringing her would shake you, make Claire wonder, make you wonder, because deep down you're just like me, Alex. You never really let go of the past. Don't compare me to you." Liam leaned in, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then prove it." A whispered warning. Before I could respond, Claire appeared in the hallway. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes, those beautiful eyes, were filled with quiet rage. "Liam," she said, her voice steady. "I don't know what you thought would happen tonight, but let me be clear. Whatever fantasy you've built up in your head ends here." Liam exhaled through his nose, shaking his head. "You're making a mistake, Claire." "No," she said, stepping closer. "The mistake was ever trusting you." His jaw tightened. For a split second, I saw something crack beneath his mask. Then, just like that, he smirked again. "Guess we'll see." With that, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Claire looked at me. "Alex, we need to talk." The final secret later that night, after the guests had gone and the music had faded, Claire and I sat in our dimly lit hotel suite. The night had been exhausting. She poured herself a glass of wine, then looked at me. "There's more." My stomach clenched. "More?" She hesitated. "A few weeks before the wedding, Liam tried to kiss me." Silence. My hands curled into fists. "He what?" She nodded, eyes downcast. "He cornered me after dinner at your parents' house, said he had to know if there was a chance. I pushed him away, told him never to try that again. I thought that was the end of it. But tonight?" I sat back, exhaling sharply. Liam had never wanted to celebrate my wedding. He wanted to undo it. And maybe he wasn't finished trying. My brother's darkest secret, Part 4. Liam was gone, but his words stayed, poisoning my thoughts. "I'm not just your brother, Alex. I'm your half-brother." The truth gnawed at me, a splinter buried too deep to pull out. Had our entire childhood been a lie? Had my father spent years pretending? Had my mother? I clenched my fists. None of it excused what Liam had done. I needed answers. A family built on lies at dawn, I drove straight to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, still in her robe, eyes tired. "Alex? What's wrong?" I pushed past her. "Tell me the truth. About Liam." The blood drained from her face. "Where is this coming from?" she whispered. "Liam told me everything," I said. "That Dad wasn't his father, that you had an affair." Her hands trembled. She looked away. Silence was confirmation. "Mom." My voice cracked. "Why didn't you tell me?" She sank into a chair. "Because I didn't want you to hate him." I stared at her. "I don't hate him because of that," I said, voice low. "I hate him because he tried to destroy my life." She wiped at her eyes. "He's always felt second. No matter what we did, he thought we loved you more." "And did you?" Her breath hitched. That was answer enough. A marriage on the brink, I returned home, my mind a storm. Claire was waiting, watching me carefully. "You found out, didn't you?" she said. I nodded. "Everything." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "What do we do now?" "I don't know," I admitted. Silence stretched between us. Then Claire hesitated. "There's something else," she murmured. My stomach turned. "Claire, what?" She swallowed hard. "Last week, before the wedding, Liam showed up at my apartment. He was drunk. He kept saying things like, 'You should have been mine.'" I exhaled sharply. "I'll kill him." "Alex." "No," I said, voice sharp. "He's crossed the line, Claire. He's not just jealous anymore. He's obsessed." She hesitated, then whispered, "I think he's dangerous." The words sent ice through my veins, because I believed her. The breaking point that night, I checked my phone. Another message from Liam. "Liam, you still don't get it, but you will soon." A chill crawled up my spine. Then another message popped up, from an unknown number. "Unknown. Check your email." I frowned, opening my laptop. When I saw the email, my breath caught. An attachment. A video. I clicked it. The screen flickered. Grainy footage, a security camera feed, a dark parking garage, and in the corner, Liam with Emily. My ex was gripping his jacket, her face inches from his, arguing. Then, Emily slapped him hard. Liam grabbed her wrist, yanking her close, his face twisted in anger. He said something I couldn't hear. And then, she fell, or was pushed. My heart pounded. Emily hadn't just come to my wedding to cause trouble. She had come because Liam wanted her there, and now she was missing. My Brother's Darkest Secret, Part 5. My hands trembled as I replayed the video. Emily. My ex. The woman Liam had dragged to my wedding as some twisted game, and now she was missing. The video wasn't clear, just grainy security footage from a parking garage. But the way she fell, or was pushed, made my stomach churn. I grabbed my phone and called Liam, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Claire stood behind me watching the screen. "Alex, what is this?" I turned to her, my voice low. "I think Liam did something to Emily." A deadly game. Begins, the police station smelled of burnt coffee and old paper. I sat across from Detective Owens, a middle-aged man with tired eyes. "You're saying your brother was the last person seen with Emily Harper?" "Yes," I said, "and she hasn't been heard from since." The detective tapped his pen against the desk. "You got proof?" I slid my phone toward him. "Watch the video." He played it, his frown deepening. When it ended, he leaned back, exhaling. "Where was this recorded?" "I don't know," I admitted. "It was sent to me anonymously." His eyes narrowed. "And you think Liam had something to do with her disappearance?" I hesitated. "I think Liam is unstable. He's been obsessed with my wife. He tried to sabotage my wedding, and now he's involved with my ex just before she vanishes." Owens nodded slowly. "All right, we'll look into it." I left the station with a sinking feeling. The truth was, I wasn't sure if the cops would take it seriously, but I couldn't wait for them. I had to find Liam. Now. The final clue, I drove straight to Liam's apartment, pounding on the door. No answer. I tested the handle. Unlocked. Stepping inside, I found the place wrecked. Drawers pulled open. Clothes. Scattered empty whiskey bottles on the table, like someone left in a hurry. Then I saw it, a slip of paper, sitting on the kitchen counter, a single address. Lakewood Motel, room 207. My pulse thundered. I knew where to find him. Showdown at Lakewood. The motel was the kind of place where people disappeared. Neon flickering, parking lot half empty, the stink of stale cigarettes in the air. I walked up to room 207 and knocked. Silence. Then, footsteps. The door cracked open. And there he was. Liam, disheveled, eyes bloodshot. And behind him, Emily, sitting. On the bed, tied to a chair, her lips split, eyes wide with fear. Jesus Christ. Alex, Liam said, his voice eerily calm. Didn't think you'd find me this fast. I shoved the door open, rage boiling in my veins. What the hell did you do? Emily let out a muffled scream behind the duct tape over her mouth. Liam sighed. Relax. She's fine. I just needed to make sure you came alone. I clenched my fists. Untie her. Now. He shook his head. Not yet. First you listen. To what, Liam? More of your delusions? He laughed, bitter and broken. You never listened, Alex. That's the problem. You took everything from me, our father, our mother's love, Claire. Claire never loved you. His jaw tightened. She could have. I took a slow step forward. This isn't about Claire anymore. Is it? This is about you. You can't stand being second. His fingers twitched, a flicker of something in his eyes. Then, before I could react, he pulled a gun. Emily screamed against the tape. I froze. Liam! Put it down. He exhaled, eyes flickering, with something almost regretful. You know what the worst part is? I stayed silent. I never wanted to be you, Alex. His voice wavered. I just wanted to be enough. His grip on the gun trembled, but I never was. For a second, I thought he was going to shoot me. Then, he turned the gun on himself. Bang! Blood splattered the wall. Liam collapsed. Emily sobbed, the chair rattling as she thrashed. I stood there, ears ringing, staring at my brother's lifeless body. This was how it ended, with secrets, with obsession, with a bullet. Epilogue. The wounds that never heal. A week later, I sat in my parents' living room, staring at the fireplace. My father hadn't spoken since Liam's death. My mother looked broken. Claire sat beside me, holding my hand. Do you think he ever really hated you? She asked softly. I swallowed hard. No, I whispered. I think he hated himself. Silence. Then Claire murmured, What happens now? I exhaled. We moved forward, but deep down I knew. Liam's shadow would never leave us, because some betrayals don't fade. They haunt you forever. The End, My Brother's Darkest Secret, Part 5. My hands trembled as I replayed the video. Emily, my ex. The woman Liam had dragged to my wedding as some twisted game, and now she was missing. The video wasn't clear, just grainy security footage from a parking garage. But the way she fell, or was pushed, made my stomach churn. I grabbed my phone and called Liam. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Claire stood behind me watching the screen. Alex, what is this? I turned to her, my voice low. I think Liam did something to Emily. A deadly game. Begins, the police station smelled, of burnt coffee and old paper. I sat across from Detective Owens, a middle-age. My Brother's Darkest Secret. Part 6. the shadows that remain. Liam was gone, but his ghost still clung to everything. The funeral was small, quiet, almost empty. My mother wept silently, while my father sat there like a stone, staring at the casket as if waiting for it to do something. And me? I just felt cold. Claire squeezed my hand as we walked back to the car. "It's over now, Alex." I wasn't sure if that was true, because there was something wrong, something I couldn't shake. And when I got home, I found the proof. The letter from the graven envelope sat on our doorstep. No name, no return address, just my name in Liam's handwriting. My breath caught as I ripped it open. Inside was a letter. "Alex, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. Maybe you think this is over, but you'd be wrong. You never saw the whole picture. You never looked deep enough. Emily was just the beginning. She knew things she shouldn't. That's why I had to keep her quiet. But there's someone else. Someone who's been pulling the strings. You think I was the villain. I was just a pawn. I hope you're ready for what's coming, because this story, it's not over." Liam. The paper trembled in my hands. "Alex?" Claire asked. "What is it?" I looked at her, my pulse hammering. I think we just stepped into something worse. And then my phone buzzed. Unknown. Number. You should have let sleeping dogs lie. I looked up at Claire, and for the first time since Liam's death, I felt real fear, because Liam's secrets hadn't died with him. They were just getting started. My Brother's Darkest Secret, Part 7, The Web of Lies. Liam was dead, but his ghost wasn't finished with me. I stared at the text message. Unknown number. You should have let sleeping dogs lie. Claire's voice barely reached me. "Alex, what is it?" I turned the phone toward her. She paled. "Who sent that?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but they're watching." Claire swallowed hard. "Alex, what if Liam wasn't lying? What if there really is someone else?" I didn't want to believe it, but something told me. This was just the beginning. A lead in the dark I called Detective Owens. He answered after 2 rings. "Alex, what's wrong?" I just got a message from someone who knows about Liam, someone who thinks this isn't over. Silence. Then, "Come in, let's talk." That night, I sat across from him in the station, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Owens tapped his pen against his notepad. "You said Liam sent you a letter?" I slid it across the table. He read it, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. "This part here?" He pointed. "Emily was just the beginning. She knew things she shouldn't." He looked up. "What did she know?" I exhaled. "That's what I need to find out." Owens nodded. "We put out a missing person alert on Emily, but so far, nothing." A chill ran down my spine. Emily hadn't been seen since Liam died, and now someone was sending me warnings. The motel room's hidden secret, I drove back to the Lakewood Motel. Room 207 was still taped off, but I had no intention of waiting for permission. I picked the lock and slipped inside. The room was exactly how I left it. Blood still stained the carpet where Liam had ended it. But something nagged at me. I moved toward the nightstand, pulling open drawers. Empty. I checked under the mattress. Nothing. Then my foot hit something. I crouched. A loose floorboard. My heart pounded as I pried it up. Inside, a burner phone. I powered it on. Locked. But there was a message on the screen. One unread text. I clicked it open, and what I saw sent a bolt of ice through my veins. It was a picture of Claire, taken from outside. Our bedroom window time-stamped 2 hours ago. Nearly dropped the phone. Someone wasn't just watching me, they were watching my wife. The clock is ticking. I raced home, my mind spinning. Claire was on the couch, scrolling her phone. Alex? She looked up. What's wrong? I grabbed her shoulders. We have to leave. Now. Her eyes widened. What? Why? I showed her the photo. Her breath hitched. Oh my God. I grabbed my car keys. We're not safe here. Claire nodded, grabbing her coat. As we stepped outside, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, I answered. Silence. Then a voice, low and cold. You should have let it go, Alex. The line went dead. I turned to Claire. We're not running. We're hunting, because whoever was behind this, they wanted to play a game, and I was about to end it. My brother's darkest secret, Part 8, The Hunter Becomes the Hunted. Liam was gone, Emily was missing, and now someone was watching my wife. Claire gripped my hand as we sped through the dark streets, the city lights blurring past. Alex, she whispered. Where are we going? Somewhere safe, I said. But the truth was, I didn't know if anywhere was safe anymore. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown. Number, you can run. It won't matter. I clenched my jaw. Whoever this was, they wanted me afraid. But fear wasn't an option. It was time to fight back. The last call from Emily. I pulled into an old parking garage, killed the engine, and turned to Claire. There's something I didn't tell you, I said. Her brows furrowed. What? I took a breath. Before our wedding, Emily called me. Claire stiffened. She said she needed to talk, that it was about Liam, but she never got the chance. Claire's eyes darkened. You think that's why she disappeared? I don't think it. I know it. I pulled out the burner phone I'd found in the motel. This was hidden in Liam's room, I told her. It had one message on it. I handed her. The phone showing her the photo of herself taken from outside our bedroom. She turned pale. Jesus, Alex. Then I scrolled up. There was another message. Unknown number, 3 days ago. Get rid of Emily before she talks. I exhaled sharply. Liam wasn't acting alone. Someone else had been pulling the strings. A familiar name. I took the burner phone to Detective Owens, the EA. Next morning, he plugged it into a system, running a trace. Minutes passed, then his face hardened. The last call made from this phone, he said slowly, was to a number registered under the name Jacob Wren. My stomach dropped. Jacob Wren, my father's business partner, a man I had known my entire life. The truth is ugly. Owens pulled up records, calls, transactions, connections. Jacob Wren had been making large cash withdrawals for over a year. Money. That led to Liam. Son of a bitch, I muttered. Owens nodded. Looks like Liam wasn't working alone after all. Wren was funding him. My pulse thundered. Liam had always felt like a second-class son. Had Wren seen that weakness? Exploited it? Had he been the one pushing Liam to destroy me? If so, why? The House of Secrets. There was only one way to find out. That night I drove to Wren's estate. I picked the lock, slipped inside. The house was dark, silent. But as I stepped into the study, I froze. The fireplace was still warm, and on the desk, a glass of whiskey. He was here. I turned, just as a gun clicked behind my head. You, should have stayed out of this, Alex, Jacob Wren's voice, low, calm, and deadly. My brother's darkest secret. Part 9. The Man in the Shadows. The cold steel of the gun pressed against the back of my head. Jacob Wren's voice was calm, almost amused. You should have stayed out of this, Alex. I slowly raised my hands. You were behind it all, weren't you? A chuckle. Not all of it. Your brother was messy. But I helped him focus. Gave him a purpose. My stomach twisted. You manipulated him. Oh, don't be so dramatic. He sighed. Liam wanted revenge. I simply gave him the means to get it. I turned my head slightly. just enough to see Ren's face. His eyes were sharp, calculating, a predator in a tailored suit. "And what did you get out of it?" I asked. He smirked. "Your family's company, for one." The realization hit me like a truck. This was never about Liam, was it? He tilted his head. Liam was useful, but the real goal was you. Ren's hand was steady on the gun. Your father always favored you, groomed you to take over. But I was his right hand for decades, Alex. I built that empire. And when he was gone, I was supposed to take control. His voice hardened. But then you came along. The golden boy, the rightful heir. I exhaled sharply. So you used Liam to destroy me. And he was more than willing. All I had to do was whisper in his ear, remind him how you took everything from him. And he did the rest. I swallowed hard. What about Emily? His smirk deepened. Ah, yes. That one became a problem. What did you do to her? Ren sighed. She overheard something she shouldn't have. I told Liam to handle it, but he was weak. He couldn't go through with it. He chuckled. It was almost pathetic. He still had a conscience, even at the end. A cold wave of rage spread through me. Where is she? His smile widened. Dead, of course. I felt the air leave my lungs. Emily was gone. Because of him. Because of Liam. And now, I was next. The tables. Turn. You know, Ren mused, I actually expected you to be smarter. I gave you all the clues. And yet here you are, standing in my house unarmed, completely at my mercy. I forced a smirk. You think I came alone? Ren's eyes narrowed, and then bang! A gunshot shattered the silence. Ren staggered, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his pristine white shirt. His gun clattered to the floor. From the shadows, Claire stepped out, gun in hand. Guess I wasn't alone after all, I said. Ren snarled, his face contorted in pain. You think this is over? He spat. You have no idea how deep this goes. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Then start talking. He let out a wheezing chuckle. You're already too late, Alex. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? His lips curled into a bloody grin. You should check your phone. I hesitated. Then my phone vibrated. A message. From unknown number, I opened it, and my heart nearly stopped. A live video feed of Emily. Alive, bound, gagged, terrified. A deep voice spoke from the feed. Time's running out, Alex. Then the screen cut to black. Looked back at Ren, fury boiling inside me. Who has her? I growled. But he just laughed, blood dripping from his lips. Tick-tock, Alex. My brother's darkest secret. Part 10. A deadly countdown. Emily was alive, bound, gagged, terrified. The video feed had lasted only 6 seconds, but that was enough to burn it into my mind. Claire stared at the phone screen, her hand still gripping the gun. Oh my God, Alex, she's alive! Ren groaned on the floor, blood seeping from his shoulder. He chuckled weakly. I told you, you have no idea how deep this goes. I grabbed him by the collar. Where is she? Who has her? He smirked, wincing. Through the pain. You're asking the wrong questions. My patience snapped. I pressed my knee into his wound. Ren screamed. Who has Emily? I demanded. Go to hell, he spat. I clenched my jaw. I didn't have time for this. Then Claire spoke. We don't need him, Alex. I turned. What? She pointed at my phone. The video. There might be something in the background. My pulse quickened. She was right. I replayed the video, slowing it down. Emily's face was streaked with dirt, eyes wide with terror. Behind her, a brick wall covered in graffiti. I zoomed in. A symbol, an old sign. I've seen that before, Claire murmured. Then it clicked. The abandoned steel mill on the east side, I said. Claire's eyes widened. That's it. I turned back to Ren. Last chance. Who are you working for? He just grinned, blood-stained teeth showing. You're already dead, Alex. I exhaled. So are you? Then I grabbed Claire's hand, and we ran. The trap is set. The steel mill loomed in the darkness, its broken windows like hollow eyes. We slipped inside, weapons ready. Dust and rust clung to the air, and then a scream. Emily. We moved fast, following. The sound, through rusted catwalks. Past old machinery. Then we saw her, tied to a chair in the center of the room. I sprinted toward her, and froze, because someone stepped out of the shadows. Gun raised. You really should have stayed out of this. Alex! And my heart stopped, because I knew that voice, the man behind it all, my father, alive. My brother's darkest secret, Part 11, the betrayal of blood, my father, alive, the man I had buried, the man I thought had died of a heart attack years ago. I stood there frozen in disbelief. You're alive? I managed to say, my voice shaking. My father's cold eyes glinted in the dim light of the steel mill. His expression was almost pleased. You didn't really think I was going to let that heart attack take me, did you, Alex? He said with a smirk. Claire's hand tightened around her gun, but I stopped her with a quick gesture. Why, Dad? I whispered, the weight of the question almost too much to bear. Why all of this? Why destroy our family? Why use Liam? Why hurt Emily? He stepped forward, the shadows clinging to his form like a second skin. Because, Alex, he said, his voice low and venomous, I didn't spend years building this empire, just to hand it over to some perfect little heir. I wanted someone who would fight for it, who would earn it. I swallowed hard, trying to process the depth of the betrayal. You used Liam, and now you're using me. His lips twisted into a cruel smile. Liam was weak, but you've always been my true son. I knew you'd figure it out eventually. I had to test you, push you, and now, here we are. You made it to the end, but the game isn't over yet. I shook my head. This isn't a game, Dad. You've crossed every line. You've hurt people. People we care about. People you don't even know. Claire took a step forward, her gun still aimed at him. Let Emily go, and maybe we can work something out. My father's laugh was dark and full of derision. Work something out? You think I'm scared of you, Claire? He turned to Emily, still bound to the chair, her eyes wide with fear. No one gets to walk away from this. Not you. Not Alex. I could feel the cold tightening in my chest. This wasn't just about money. It wasn't just about control. This was about revenge. A revenge so deep, so tangled, it had consumed him for years. But I couldn't let him win. Not now. Not after everything we'd been through. The final move, I took a step toward him, my voice steady. You've been hiding behind lies, behind manipulation. But it ends now. You're not getting away with this. He laughed again, louder this time, as though I were some naive child. Do you think I haven't planned for this moment? You're not going to stop me, Alex. You never were meant to. Before I could even react, he signaled. And from the shadows, 2 armed men stepped forward, their guns trained on us. I froze. Claire's grip on her gun tightened. Alex, we need to move. But I didn't move. I knew now what my father had done. He didn't just manipulate Liam. He'd infiltrated our family, in a way I never thought possible. He had been waiting for this moment, waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. He stepped closer, his voice a whisper. You really thought you could defeat me, didn't you? That's the problem with people like you. You think good always wins, but I know better. I always have. I felt the weight of everything crashing down on me, the years of lies, the pain, the broken trust. But then, in that moment of despair, I saw Claire's eyes. She didn't look afraid. She didn't look defeated. She looked determined. I saw her eyes flicker to the side, the fire extinguisher mounted on the wall next to the door. It was a signal. I knew what I had to do. The fight for freedom in one swift motion, I grabbed the extinguisher, throwing it at the armed men as they started to aim at Claire. The force knocked one of them back, and Claire dove forward, disarming the other. I tackled my father, throwing him off balance. He staggered, shocked at my sudden move, but he was too old, too weakened by years of hiding and scheming. I shoved him to the ground, my hands on his throat. "This is where it ends, Dad," I hissed, for the first time in years. I saw genuine fear in his eyes. But before I could do anything else, the door slammed open, and Owens and his team poured into the room. I looked up, my heart racing. "Detective," Owens nodded, his team quickly taking control of the situation. The two armed men were restrained, and my father was yanked to his feet. "You're under arrest for the abduction of Emily Harrison, conspiracy, and the murder of your own son." Owens's voice was calm, but the weight of his words hit like a hammer. My father's face twisted in rage. "You think you've won, Alex? You're just a pawn in a bigger game." I looked down at him, my voice steady. "No, Dad. This time, I'm the one who's playing the game." And then I turned to Emily, running to her, pulling her into my arms. The final choice, as I held her close, Emily whispered, "Alex, I don't know what's going to happen to me, but thank you." I kissed her forehead. "You're safe now. We're both safe." I glanced back at my father, now being led away in handcuffs. The truth had been ugly, but I had faced it. And in the end, the real victory wasn't in defeating my father. It was in choosing family, choosing love. My Brother's Darkest Secret, Part 12, The Aftermath. The sound of my father's handcuffs scraping against the cold concrete echoed in the steel mill. His presence, once so powerful, now felt fragile, reduced to a man shackled by his own delusions. Emily clung to me, her arms wrapped tightly around my waist, and I could feel her body trembling. Not just from fear, but from the weight of everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal. Claire stood a few feet away, her gun holstered but her eyes still sharp, scanning the room for threats. Owens had already instructed his team to sweep the mill for any further traps or hidden dangers, but there was a heaviness in the air. It wasn't over yet, but at least now we had control. Owens approached me, his face grim but resolute. "Alex," he said quietly, "we've got Wren and the others taken care of. They'll be off the streets soon enough." I nodded, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't stop thinking about the video, the phone call, the moment I'd realized that my father, the man I had respected, looked up to, had been orchestrating everything. All of it. "What now?" I asked, voice thick with exhaustion. Owens rubbed his face as if the toll of this case was finally sinking in. "The investigation's not over. We still need to piece together everything. But one thing's clear. You've got a hell of a story to tell, Alex." I met his gaze. "I'm not sure I'm ready to tell it. Not yet." The night had been long, but it wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Back to the beginning by the time we got back to our apartment. The first light of dawn was creeping through the blinds. I walked into the kitchen, making a pot of coffee. Claire sat at the counter, still absorbing everything. That had happened, her fingers tapping absent-mindedly on the countertop. Emily had fallen asleep in the living room, a blanket draped over her. I had kissed her forehead before leaving her to rest. She needed it. Claire's voice broke the silence. "Do you think we'll ever really know everything?" I turned, meeting her eyes. "No. There are too many pieces missing. Too many people involved." She stood walking over to me. "But you're going to try, right?" I sighed deeply, nodding. "I will. I need to. For Emily, for me, for all of us." Claire's eyes softened. "You've come a long way, Alex." I smiled faintly. "So have you." She looked down, as if grappling with something. Then she met my eyes again. "What about Liam?" I froze. The name of my brother, my blood, hung in the air. The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Liam. Had he known? Had he been so consumed by jealousy and hate that he couldn't see what my father was really doing? I shook my head. "I don't know, Claire. I don't think I'll ever know." But as I looked down at the coffee brewing in front of me, I realized that some mysteries were better left unsolved. A new threat. Just then my phone buzzed. It was a message. From an unknown number, the same one that had taunted me before. "This is just the beginning, Alex. You think you've won, but there are things you don't understand yet. The game is far from over." I stared at the message. It was chilling, unsettling. Claire leaned over to look at the screen. "What's it say?" I showed her the message, my stomach sinking. "We're not out of the woods yet." "Who is this?" she asked. But I could already tell that it wasn't a random threat. It was someone close, someone who had been watching us from the shadows all along. The final secret. I spent the next few hours retracing everything. The phone calls, the messages, the people involved. I felt like I was staring down the barrel of a mystery too vast to comprehend, but I couldn't look away. And then, I got an answer. I had a hunch, a gut feeling. I hacked into my father's old business records, tracking the final payments he'd made before everything came crashing down. There were names I hadn't recognized, offshore accounts and shell corporations, but there was one name that stuck out. Jacob Wren wasn't the mastermind. He was the decoy. Behind him, someone I never would have suspected. Someone whose name had disappeared from the family records years ago. It was a name I hadn't thought about since I was a child. My mother's. Brother Uncle Robert. My Brother's Darkest Secret, Part 13, The Hidden Hand. Uncle Robert. The name hit me like a thunderclap. My mother's brother. The one who had vanished from our lives after a bitter family fallout. No one ever talked about him. Not my father. Not even my mother. The silence around him was unnerving, a void that no one dared to fill. He was the family secret. But now, with the weight of everything that had happened, the betrayal, the manipulation, the twisted games, I understood. Uncle Robert had never truly been gone. He had been watching, waiting. I stared at the name in front of me, the bank account numbers, the transfer logs, and it all clicked. My father hadn't acted alone. The money, the power, the manipulation, it all pointed to him. Uncle Robert was the true mastermind, and he had been pulling the strings all along. I felt a cold sweat forming on my back. This was bigger than I could have ever imagined. Claire was next to me, her expression tight with tension. "What is it, Alex?" I turned to her, my voice barely above a whisper. "Uncle Robert. He's the one behind all of this. He's been orchestrating everything." She blinked, shock rippling through her. "But why? Why would he do this? Why would he stay in the shadows all these years?" I clenched my fists. "Because he has a vendetta. Against our family, against me." I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to find him. And if he was still out there, lurking in the background, he wouldn't stop. Until he finished what he'd started. The road to the truth, it didn't take long to trace Uncle Robert's footsteps. The money trail led me to a small, nondescript house in a quiet part of town, tucked away behind overgrown hedges. A place no one would think to look, but I had to be sure. I had to confront him. We arrived late that night. The streets bathed in, the eerie glow of the streetlights. The house stood silent, almost as if it were holding its breath. Waiting. "Stay close," I told Claire, my voice low. She nodded, her hand once again on her gun. We approached the door cautiously, the weight of the moment pressing down on us. Every step felt like it was leading us into the lion's den. I knocked twice, and then we waited. A soft shuffle came from inside. A light flickered on behind the curtains, and then the door creaked open, revealing the last person I had expected to see, Uncle Robert. His face was older, weathered by time, but his eyes were as cold and calculating as I remembered from my childhood. He hadn't changed. "Alex," he said, his voice smooth, almost affectionate. "It's been a long time." I took a step forward, my anger flaring. "I should have known. You were behind all of it, weren't you? The lies, the manipulations, the death of Emily's parents, everything." He smiled, the expression almost paternal, but there was no warmth behind it. "It was never personal, Alex. It was just business." I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. "Business?" I echoed. "You ruined our lives for business?" His smile faded, replaced by a flicker of something darker. "Your father never understood. He was always focused on maintaining control, building his empire. But I saw the bigger picture. The world isn't about bloodlines, Alex. It's about power. And I knew the only way to get it was to destroy what you loved most." He stepped aside, motioning for us to enter. "Come in, let's talk." We hesitated but stepped inside. The house was far more luxurious than I'd expected, the walls lined with expensive art, the furniture sleek and modern. But everything felt empty, as if it was built for someone who didn't belong. He gestured to the chairs in the living room, and we sat down. "So you've uncovered everything, haven't you?" I nodded, my blood still boiling. "You're the one who pushed Liam? The one who orchestrated everything?" He leaned back, crossing his legs. "Liam was a means to an end. Your father was never going to give me control. He thought he could manipulate the system forever. But I knew better. I knew that if I couldn't destroy him, I could destroy his legacy. And you, Alex, you were the perfect target." Claire's voice was sharp. "What do you want from us? Why involve Emily? Why make her suffer?" Uncle Robert's gaze shifted to Emily, still at home, unaware of everything that was unfolding. He seemed almost bored. "It's not personal, Claire." It never was. She was just in the way, a piece of leverage I could use. The venom in his words made me sick. "You're insane. You've thrown everything away for power." He chuckled softly, his fingers drumming against the armrest. "You think this is a game, don't you? A choice between good and evil. The truth is, Alex, there's no such thing. There's just survival. You've been too naive to see it. I've had the upper hand the entire time. You just didn't know." I stood up, my fists clenched. "Then I'll end it, Uncle. You're done." But he raised a hand, his smile returning. My brother's darkest secret. Part 14. The ultimate betrayal. Liam. My breath caught in my throat as he stepped into the room, his eyes cold and unforgiving. He was wearing the same smug, confident expression he'd always had, but now it felt wrong. I couldn't believe it. This wasn't the brother I thought I knew. This wasn't the boy I'd protected, the one I'd shared secrets with, the one I had believed in, no matter how far off the deep end he went. "Liam?" I breathed, my voice breaking under the weight of disbelief. "What the hell are you doing? Here?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Uncle Robert, who gave him a small nod of approval. "You should have known, Alex." Liam finally spoke, his voice hollow. "I was never on your side." I staggered backward as though the floor had just been ripped out from under me. What do you mean?" Liam's eyes were no longer those of the brother I grew up with. They were cold, calculated. "You were always the perfect little golden boy, always getting everything handed to you, but not me. I had to fight for everything, and in the end, it wasn't enough." My mind raced, trying to process the weight of his words. "You're telling me you've been working with Uncle Robert all along?" Liam chuckled, dark and bitter. "Oh, I didn't have much of a choice, did I? I was being used, Alex. We both were." Used. The words stung more than I expected. But as the truth hit me, the pieces fell together. Liam had been in the shadows this whole time, playing a role in my father's fall, in my family's destruction. But why? Why hadn't he just told me? Why had he let me think I could trust him? "No, Liam, I don't believe you." My voice cracked, trying to hold on to something, anything, that would make sense of this. You knew what was happening to Emily, to all of us, and you were okay with it?" Liam's eyes hardened. "It's not about being okay, Alex. It's about surviving. The world doesn't care about loyalty or love. It just cares about what you can give. And I didn't have anything left to give. I had to make a choice, and I chose power. I chose to be on the winning side." His words hit like a punch to the gut. This was no longer my brother standing in front of me. This was a man who had traded everything for ambition. I felt the bile rise in my throat. "You sold us out. You sold Emily out." Liam stepped forward, a dark glint in his eyes. "You never understood, Alex. You always thought you were the better one. But you've always been weak. Too much of your father in you, always trying to do the right thing, always trying to fix things. But you can't fix this." I was shaking now, the truth crushing me from all sides. "I'll never be like you." But he didn't even flinch. He didn't care. He just smiled. A cruel, knowing smile. "Maybe, but you're about to learn just how far you're willing to go to survive. And that's the real game." A chill ran through me. This was it. The moment I realized that I'd been blind to everything. Liam was the puppet master. He had orchestrated everything. He had been working behind the scenes, pulling the strings of the chaos that had almost destroyed us. And now it was clear he was the one I had to stop. Not Uncle Robert, not my father. Liam. The standoff Claire stepped forward, her voice cold and steely. "Enough talk, Liam. If you're going to pull this off, you're going to have to do it with me in the way." Liam laughed softly. "You think you can stop me?" His eyes flicked to Uncle Robert, who was now standing, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold with a detached interest. "You were never meant to stop me. None of you were." But then, something in Liam's eyes shifted. A flicker of something. Doubt? No. Fear. It was subtle, but I saw it. He knew something was coming. He knew the walls were closing in. "You think this is your victory?" he spat, his voice rising in anger. "You think I'll just walk away?" I took a step toward him, my eyes narrowing. "No, Liam. You're going to face the consequences of everything you've done, the lies, the betrayal, and the people you've hurt." For a moment, we were locked in a silent standoff. Then, in a flash, Liam reached into his jacket. I barely had time to react before he pulled out a gun, aiming it directly at me. Claire dove forward. Time seemed to slow down. I saw her movement in the corner of my eye, her body lunging in front of me. The gunshot rang out, loud and deafening. Claire hit the ground. The final showdown. Everything froze. My body felt like it was encased in ice. Claire. She couldn't be. I turned to her, my heart pounding in my chest, but Claire wasn't down. For long. She gritted her teeth, pushing herself up, her gun still clutched tightly in her hand. Liam stood there, a look of shock on his face, the gun still smoking in his hand. What the hell? But before he could finish his sentence, Claire's gun was up, aimed directly at him. "Don't move, Liam." He raised his hands in mock surrender. My brother's darkest secret. Part 15. Repercussions. The days after the showdown with Liam and Uncle Robert felt like a blur. The weight of everything we had uncovered hung heavy in the air, like a storm cloud that refused to disperse. The world had shifted around me, and I was left standing in its aftermath, unsure of where to go next. The investigation moved swiftly. Liam and Uncle Robert were both arrested, though the charges against them were staggering. The authorities had already started piecing together their web of lies, corruption, and betrayal. They'd been involved in more than just the schemes that had nearly torn my life apart. They had their hands in everything. From illegal arms deals to laundering money for international syndicates, they had woven a tangled mess that no one had seen coming. And yet, despite their fall from grace, a part of me couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out of place. Emily, still blissfully unaware of the true scope of the darkness that had surrounded her, had been nothing short of a light in this storm. But as I looked at her, I realized the question I'd been asking myself for weeks. How do you move on from something like this? How do you rebuild a life when everything you thought you knew was a lie? I was desperate for answers, but no amount of police reports, interrogations, or apologies would ever be enough. The visit one afternoon, as I sat at the kitchen table, staring blankly at my phone, there was a knock at the door. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the door slowly, and there, standing in front of me, was a figure I never thought I'd see again. Liam. His face was battered and bruised from his time in custody, his clothes a tattered version of what he used to wear. He didn't seem the same, broken, worn down by the weight of his actions, but despite the state he was in, his eyes were as cold as ever. "You should have killed me, Alex." His voice was hoarse, almost pleading. "You should have ended it when you had the chance." I couldn't believe it. After everything, he still had the audacity to stand here, to speak like he was the victim. "You think you deserve mercy?" I growled, stepping toward him. "After everything you've done? You're lucky they didn't throw you in the deepest hole." He didn't flinch. "I deserve something. After everything, you still don't get it. Do you, Alex? None of this was about me or you or anyone else. It was about power. I've lived in the shadows all my life, and you never once even considered it. This whole time, you've played the good guy, the hero, but it was never about that. It was about who got to control the game." His words hit me like a punch in the gut, but I refused to let him get under my skin. "What do you want, Liam?" He looked at me, his gaze hollow. "I came to warn you. They're coming for you. You think this is over? They've been watching you the entire time. And it's not just Uncle Robert or Wren or any of them. The game is bigger." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What are you talking about?" He lowered his voice, leaning closer, his words a whisper that felt like a threat. "You're not safe, Alex. Not with them. Not with the people watching. The ones you think are gone. They're just waiting. And they won't stop until everything is in their hands." Before I could react, Liam turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows like a ghost, his final words hanging in the air like a curse. A new enemy. The next morning, I could feel the change in the air. The tension had returned. This time, it wasn't just in the people around me, but in the very fabric of my life. I called Owens immediately. I had to know if Liam's warning had any truth to it. "I've looked into it, Alex. There's something strange going on." Owens's voice was grim. "I did some digging on the side. You're right to be concerned. I found traces of a group. Deep underground. People we thought were out of the picture. Powerful players who've kept their hands clean. But they're very much in the game." "Who are they?" I asked, my heart racing. "I don't have all the answers yet, but they're connected to something bigger, something international. Their reach, it's beyond anything you've ever seen before." I felt a chill run down my spine. The trap as the days passed, I began to feel the walls closing in. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. I would turn a corner and there would be someone, a shadow, who didn't belong. I couldn't escape the feeling that they were waiting. It wasn't just paranoia, something was happening, something I couldn't control. Then one night I got a call. The voice on the other end was familiar but distorted. "Alex, you've made a mistake." My heart stopped. It was a voice I hadn't heard in months. "Claire, what happened?" "Where are you?" I demanded, panic rising. Her voice was strained, as if she was struggling to keep calm. "I'm okay for now, but you need to listen to me." My brother's darkest secret. Part 16. Into the Shadows. The night after Claire's call, I didn't sleep. The weight of everything had become too much to carry, and I was suffocating in the knowledge that there were still forces at play. Forces I had no control over. It wasn't just Liam and Uncle Robert. It wasn't even just the corrupted officials and people who had been feeding off the remnants of our family. No. This was bigger. Something darker. Something deeper. I had to act. Fast. Claire's warning was seared into my mind. They've been watching us since the beginning. I didn't have a choice. The next day I packed what little I could. Clothes, a few essentials, the bare minimum. But I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter how fast I moved, no matter how many precautions I took, I would never outrun whatever was chasing me. The decision. The hardest part of the decision was not leaving my life behind, but leaving Emily. I didn't want to drag her into this. She deserved to be free of the chaos I had unwittingly invited into our lives. She deserved peace, not a life on the run, but I couldn't protect her from a distance. If I stayed, I was putting her in danger. I found her sitting on the couch when I returned after gathering what I needed. Her eyes locked on mine, and for a brief moment everything felt normal again. "Alex, what's going on?" she asked, her voice soft but laden with suspicion. She could tell something was wrong. She always could. I knelt in front of her, my heart breaking. "I'm leaving, Emily. I have to. There are people after me, and I need to disappear. For a while." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "What are you talking about? Alex, you can't just—" I placed a finger gently on her lips, silencing her. "It's for your safety. Please just trust me. I'll explain everything later. But right now, I need to go." Her hand reached for mine, tears welling up in her eyes. "I can't lose you, Alex. Not now. After everything we've been through." My heart shattered at the thought, but I knew that if I stayed, it would only put her in more danger. I pressed, my forehead against hers, whispering, "I'll come back. I promise you. But you have to let me go. It's the only way." She didn't say anything. She just nodded, her silent tears breaking me into pieces as I kissed her forehead and slipped away into the night. The shadow network I drove for hours, leaving the city behind. The landscape blurred in my rearview mirror, and I felt a growing sense of dread in my chest. I wasn't just running from Liam or Uncle Robert. I was running from something far darker, something more dangerous than they could ever be. I had no idea who these people were, but I had learned one thing from Liam's cryptic warning. They controlled everything. When I reached the small, anonymous town where I'd set up my safe house, a place I'd made contact with a contact I'd used in the past for emergency situations, I didn't feel relief. I felt hunted. I met with my contact, a shadowy figure known only as Elias. He was a former operative, someone who dealt in secrets and information, often with the kind of people that the law couldn't touch. He was my lifeline. Without him, I wouldn't have survived this long. "Elias," I said, my voice low as we sat in the dimly lit room. "You've got to help me. They're still out there." Elias leaned back in his chair, eyes flicking to the window as though he could feel someone watching him. He spoke in a quiet, almost casual tone. "I know. You're not the first one to be dragged into their game. There's a group, Alex. A network. They're too powerful for most people to even know about. They run things from behind the scenes, black market, dealings, global arms trafficking, corruption within governments. Who are they? I asked urgently. Elias hesitated, his fingers tapping the table. No one knows their real names. They operate in the shadows with countless fronts, so their true faces never get seen. But I've been tracking them for years. They've been pulling strings in your life, Alex, and you've been walking right into their hands. I swallowed hard. I thought it was just my father and Uncle Robert. I didn't realize it was this big. Elias nodded grimly. You still don't get it, do you? Your father and your uncle were small players in their game. They use them, just like they use everyone else. But now they have you, and they'll do whatever it takes to make sure you don't escape. My stomach churned. I couldn't breathe. How do I fight something like this? How do I stop them? Elias sat up straighter, his voice low and serious. You don't fight them, Alex, not directly. You'll have to be smarter than that. You'll have to outwit them, outlast them. And you need to gather your resources. Fast. Before I could ask what he meant, Elias handed me an envelope. The contents were simple, a set of names, numbers, and an encrypted contact list. These are your allies. If you want to survive, you'll need their help. My brother's darkest secret, Part 17, The Truth Unveiled. The words Claire spoke were like a slap to the face, each syllable echoing in the silence of the room. They know. I could barely process it. Who were these people? How had they gotten this close? And, more importantly, what did they want with me now that they were aware of my every move? I immediately called Elias, my heart hammering in my chest. Elias, we've got a problem. Claire says they know everything. How could they find us? There was a brief pause on the line, a flicker of something dark in his voice when he responded. They're good, Alex. Too good. And it seems like they've been closer than you think. If they've found Claire, it means they're already in your life, probably before you even knew it. I clenched my fists. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of the pieces. Could this be true? Had someone been feeding them information all along? Could there have been a mole? Someone I trusted? Are you saying it's someone I know? I whispered, dread settling like ice in my veins. Elias's voice was quiet, but laced with tension. I don't know, Alex, but be careful. You're playing a game where the rules are set by them and they control every move. Suddenly, the room felt suffocating. I had no answers, no clear path forward. Just the unsettling knowledge that I had become part of a much larger and darker story, one where I had no control. The first betrayal, it wasn't long before I discovered just how deep the web went. As I tried to dig further into the network, things began to fall apart. Contacts that had once been reliable started going silent. Key pieces of information I thought I had were being wiped from my systems. And then came the phone call. It was from Emily. Her voice was frantic, laced with fear. Alex, you have to listen to me. I don't know how to say this, but I think someone close to you is working with them, someone we've both trusted. I can't explain how I know, but I know. I froze. The words someone close felt like a knife twisting in my gut. My mind raced through every person I had come into contact with. Elias, Claire, even some of the people from my past. But one person stood out above the rest. Could it be him? My breath caught in my throat. I had to know. I needed to confirm. In a dangerous confrontation, I didn't waste time. That evening, I arranged a meeting with John, my longtime friend and former business associate. He had been one of the few people I trusted after everything that had happened, and I was determined to get to the bottom of this. When I arrived at the secluded bar where we had arranged to meet, the atmosphere was heavy, the air thick with tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to break wide open. John was already there, his back to me as he sipped from a glass of whiskey. He didn't turn around until I slid into the seat across from him. His eyes met mine, and there was something in them, something off. "Alex, it's good to see you," John said, his voice smooth but lacking warmth. "You've been harder to track down than I thought." I didn't mince words. "I know what you've been doing, John, and I want you to stop." John raised an eyebrow, leaning forward just slightly. "What are you talking about?" I kept my voice steady, trying to mask the storm brewing inside me. "You're working with them, aren't you? You've been feeding them information about me, about everything I've done." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, but only for a moment. Then his lips curled into a smirk. "So, you figured it out. You really are smarter than you look." I felt the world shift beneath me. John, the one person I had never suspected. The one person I had trusted completely. "Why?" I whispered, my voice cracking under the weight of the question. "Why would you betray me?" John's eyes darkened. "It's not personal, Alex. It never was. I'm in this for the same reason. You are to survive. And you, my friend, are in way over your head. You were always just a pawn in a much bigger game. I'm doing what I need to do to stay alive." I shook my head, struggling to comprehend. "No, you're not just trying to survive, you're a part of it. You've been a part of it this whole time, haven't you? All this, everything that's happened, it was a setup." John didn't answer. Instead, he stood up, straightening, his jacket, his demeanor cold. "I never wanted to hurt you, Alex, but you've left me no choice." He turned to leave, but I couldn't let him go that easily. I reached out, grabbing his arm. "You think you've won, don't you?" John paused, his eyes hardening. "It's not about winning, Alex. It's about surviving. And you won't survive this." He yanked his arm free, his final words hanging in the air like a death sentence. The trap is set. As I watched John walk out of the bar, everything clicked into place. He had been playing both sides from the beginning, but that wasn't even. The worst part. My brother's darkest secret. Part 18. The final betrayal. The gun was steady in Emily's hands, the cold steel of it glinting under the dim light of the safe house. I couldn't breathe. The woman I had fought so hard to protect, the one I had promised to return to, was standing before me with a weapon aimed squarely at my chest. Her eyes, dark and unrecognizable, were filled with a chilling determination. "Emily." My voice faltered, not out of fear for myself, but out of confusion. "What the hell is this? Why are you doing this?" Her lips curled into a thin, cold smile. "You don't get it, do you? I've been in this game long before you ever knew. You were never meant to win, Alex. You were just another piece in a much bigger puzzle." I shook my head, stepping back, my mind racing for answers. How could I have missed this? How could I have not seen it coming? Emily was the last person I would have suspected. I trusted her, with everything. But now, standing here, she was a stranger, a puppet controlled by the same unseen hand that had been manipulating me all along. You've been working with them," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "This whole time? Who are you working for, Emily? Who put you up to this?" She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at me as though I were a child, still unaware of the larger game. Finally, she spoke, her voice cold, almost detached. "The question isn't who I'm working for, Alex. The real question is, who do you think you're running from?" The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "What do you mean? Who am I running from?" Emily's expression softened, just for a moment as if she were letting her guard down. Then, she looked straight into my eyes. "You're not just running from your brother, or your uncle, or even the network. You're running from your own blood, from your own family, Alex." I stared at her, my mind spinning. Family? The words didn't make sense. "What the hell are you talking about? You're my family!" I shouted, the frustration and betrayal clawing at me. Why are you doing this? You know everything that's been happening to me. You know who they are. She sighed, lowering the gun slightly, but not enough for me to feel safe. I've known far more than you think, Alex, but you've been blind to it. You think your father and uncle were just pawns in a game? No, they were key players in it, and so were you. I was trembling now, not out of fear of her, but from the depth of the realization crashing down on me. My father? My uncle? What do you mean? She stepped closer, the gun still in her hands, but her voice now softer, almost conspiratorial. You're the heir to a much darker legacy than you could ever imagine, Alex. The network didn't just choose you randomly. You're a descendant of a line that has been running this game for generations. Your father and uncle were just the tip of the iceberg. But you? You're their final piece. The world seemed to tilt. I took a step back, my mind grasping at straws, trying to understand what she was saying. This is insane. No, you're wrong. They're not my family. You can't be telling the truth. Emily's eyes grew darker, the coldness in them wrapping around my chest like a vice. I'm afraid I'm not wrong, Alex. This goes back generations. Your bloodline is tangled in it, woven into the very fabric of this network. Your family has been playing the game longer than you know, and they were preparing you for it. No. This can't be true, I whispered, my voice trembling. My family, they were just good people. They weren't part of this. They couldn't have been. She shook her head. You still don't understand. Your father was one of their top agents, Alex. He was sent to keep you on track, to mold you into a perfect successor for what's to come. And now that you've found the truth, you're more valuable to them than ever. I staggered, back, trying to absorb the magnitude of what she was saying. But there were too many questions, too many pieces I couldn't make fit. My father, the man I'd thought of as a protector, a man who I had looked up to my entire life, was part of this dark network. And my brother Liam had been playing me the entire time as well. I had been their pawn from the very beginning, each move calculated, each step I took part of a larger design. I could barely breathe. My family, the people I trusted most, were all tangled in this web of lies, and I had never seen it coming. The deal with the devil, Emily lowered the gun, her posture relaxed but still carrying an air of finality. I didn't want this, Alex, but it's too late for you now. You can't escape your fate. You're already in this too deep. I stared at her, pain and anger washing over me in waves. What do you want from me, Emily? Why are you telling me all this? She stepped forward, her voice now colder than ice. Because I have a choice to make, Alex. And so do you. You can fight me, try to run, and in the end, they'll find you. My brother's darkest secret, Part 19, The Tipping Point. The night was thick with tension, the air cold against my skin as I stood in the dimly lit safe house, my mind racing. The world felt like it had shifted on its axis. Emily, the one person I had trusted more than anyone, had just betrayed me in the most unimaginable way. The truth about my family, the legacy of deception that ran through my bloodline, the web of lies. Everything I thought I knew about my life had been shattered. I was now in the heart of an untold war, one I had never prepared for. The stakes weren't just about survival anymore. It was about who would control my fate. But there was no going back now. Emily's words still haunted me. You've already lost. It was like a challenge, a taunt. And I wasn't about to let her or anyone else decide my future for me. I needed to understand more. I needed to find out everything. The infiltration. The next few days were a blur. I kept my head low, moving through the shadows, avoiding everyone who might be tracking me. Emily had made it clear that I was a target, but it wasn't just her I had to worry about. The entire network was watching, waiting for me to slip up. I needed to gather every shred of information I could before they closed in. I reached out to Elias, my only ally who had survived this long without betraying me. He knew the world I was stepping into, and if there was any hope of breaking free, he was the one who could help me. "Alex, listen to me," he said when I finally tracked him down in a dimly lit bar. "You need to understand something. The network is far more organized than we thought. They have eyes everywhere. And now that they know you're trying to break free, you've become their priority. You need to get out of town, leave everything behind." I shook my head, the weight of his words sinking in. "I can't leave, Elias. Not until I understand everything. Not until I know who's behind all of this. I have to know the truth about my family, my past. If I run now, they'll win. I'll never get out of this." Elias looked me in the eye, his gaze filled with a strange sadness. "Alex, you don't realize how deep this goes. Your family isn't just a part of the network. They are the network. Your father, your uncle, they were at the top. And you, Alex, you're the last piece they need to complete their plans. If you don't stop now, you'll be swallowed by it all." His words echoed in my mind, but I wasn't about to back down. I wasn't going to let my family's legacy control me. I was going to uncover the truth, no matter what it took. The secret chamber. After the conversation with Elias, I knew I had to go deeper, push further than I ever had before. It wasn't just about finding the pieces of the puzzle anymore. It was about reclaiming my life. I thought about the house, the place where everything began, the one that still felt like home in the midst of all the chaos. My father's study, the secret chamber I had always been too afraid to investigate. What was hidden in there? What was so important that even my father, with all his authority, had gone to such lengths to keep it sealed away? That night, I went to the house. My heart raced with every step I took toward it, but I had no choice. I had to find out. I had to uncover the final piece of the mystery. The door creaked as I entered the study, my footsteps soft on the old wooden floors. The air was thick with dust, and the silence was almost suffocating. I moved toward the wall where I knew the secret panel was hidden, the one my father had always kept locked. It took a few minutes of searching, but finally, I found the hidden latch. My hands trembled as I pulled it open, revealing a dark space behind the wall. Inside, there were shelves lined with dusty books, documents, and old photographs. But one file caught my eye, a red folder, its contents sealed with a heavy lock. My pulse quickened. This was it. I opened it carefully, the paper inside yellowed with age. The words on the first page burned into my mind. The final legacy of the bloodline. The family's true role. As I read through the documents, my stomach twisted. The truth was far darker than I could have ever imagined. My father and uncle weren't just businessmen or philanthropists. They were the architects of a global network, a shadow organization that controlled everything from politics to the economy. But what was even more chilling was the fact that I was the key to their ultimate goal. They had planned for this moment since before I was born, molding me to take over when the time came. I was never meant to be a free man. I was a puppet in their game, the heir to a dynasty of power, control, and manipulation. My role wasn't just to lead the network. It was to expand it, to bring it into the light, to take everything my family had built and make it even more dangerous. I felt sick, betrayed. My entire life had been a lie, a carefully constructed facade. Every decision I'd ever made, my brother's darkest secret. Part 20. The Point of No Return. The tension between Liam and me hung in the air like a sword waiting to fall. His words were final, but my heart pounded with something far more powerful than fear. Resolve. Then, "You're dead to me, Alex." Liam's voice was a cold, final judgment, but his words only steeled my determination. I was no longer a pawn in their game. This was my choice, and I was going to take control of it, even if it meant tearing everything down. The last secret. I could feel the weight of the moment. Everything I had discovered, the truth about my father and uncle, the legacy of the network, the betrayal by those closest to me, had brought me to this precipice. It was either fight or fall, and I wasn't about to let them win. Liam's cold gaze burned into me as he waited for a response, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction of knowing just how much his words hurt. I stood tall, my fists clenched at my sides. "I'm not afraid of you, Liam," I said, my voice steady despite the hurricane inside me. "And I'm not afraid of your network." Liam raised an eyebrow, an almost amused look flickering across his face. "You should be." He was wrong. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid. I had the truth, and the truth was the most powerful weapon I had. But as the tension in the room thickened, something unexpected happened. From the corner of the room, a shadow moved. My heart skipped a beat as a figure stepped into the dim light. It was Emily. "What the hell is she doing here?" I growled, my eyes snapping toward her. My mind couldn't comprehend what was happening. But Emily only gave me a faint, almost regretful smile. "It's time, Alex." Her words were soft, but they echoed with a weight that sent a chill through me. She stepped toward Liam, her eyes never leaving mine. "Emily?" I whispered, struggling to make sense of the betrayal. You can't be serious. After everything, after what you told me, what you showed me, you're still with him?" Her gaze softened, but there was no warmth in it. Just a quiet sadness. "I never wanted to be the one to tell you, Alex. But you needed to understand. I've tried to protect you. But there's no way out now. It's too late." Liam smiled at her words, a hint of approval in his eyes. "See? Emily gets it. The family doesn't abandon its own." The weight of her words hit me like a freight train. There was no escape. They had been planning this moment for years. All along, I had been part of the plan, and in their eyes, I was never meant to break free. I was meant to join them, to take my rightful place in the shadowy empire that had run my family for generations. The point of no return, but something in me snapped. I had spent too many years wondering if there was a way to escape this fate, if there was something, anything that could save me. I had fought against it for so long, hoping to find a way out. But now, I realized that there was another way. I didn't have to accept this fate. I didn't have to become one of them. I could destroy what they had built. I could burn it all to the ground. With that thought, the plan began to form in my mind. I had to act quickly, while they were still underestimating me. I wasn't going to let them control me. Not again. I shifted, my movements deliberate and slow. My eyes flickered between Liam and Emily. They hadn't seen it yet, but I was already plotting my next move. I wasn't going to fight them head on. I was going to undermine them, and the key to that was information. If I could expose the truth about the network, if I could tear down its foundation, they would be powerless. I needed to strike before they realized what I was about to do. "So, betrayal within as if reading my mind," Emily suddenly spoke. "You're already too late, Alex." I looked at her, disbelief written all over my face. "What do you mean?" She stepped closer, her gaze unwavering. "There's a reason we never told you the whole truth. A reason we kept certain things. From you. You see, Alex, the network isn't just an organization, it's a system. A system that has already infiltrated every aspect of your life. You think you're the one who can bring it down? You're just another part of it. Just like us." I felt a wave of cold wash over me, her words sinking in. She wasn't lying. The network had been built over generations. It wasn't just about Power and money. It was a legacy, and I was part of it. Whether I liked it or not, it had been part of my bloodline all along, but that didn't mean I had to accept it. "You're wrong," I said, stepping forward with newfound determination. "You may think I'm part of this system, but you're wrong. I'm going to expose you. I'm going to take it all down, and you'll be the ones who pay." Liam's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold fury. "You think you can stop us? Alex? You don't even know who you're dealing with." His words hung in the air like a death sentence, but I didn't flinch. I couldn't. I wasn't going to make it easy for them. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. I had to outsmart them. I knew they were still underestimating me. They thought they had me cornered, that I was broken, that I was their prey. But in that moment, I realized I was far more dangerous than they ever realized. I didn't say another word to them. Without warning, I spun on my heel, heading straight for the door. Emily called after me. "You can't leave, Alex. It's over. There's nowhere left for you to run." But I didn't stop. I had made my decision. There was no turning back. I had a plan, a final, desperate play to take everything down. I knew what I had to do, and I wasn't going to wait around for them to close in on me. The final choice. With the weight of everything on my shoulders, I walked out of that house, my resolve as hard as steel. The game wasn't over. Not yet. But it would be soon, and I would be the one to decide how it ended. My brother's darkest secret. Part 21. The Reckoning. The night air was sharp and biting as I walked away from the house, my heart racing, adrenaline surging through my veins. There was no turning back now. The pieces were in motion, and I knew I was running out of time. If I didn't act quickly, the network would swallow me whole, and everything I had fought for would be lost. My mind was a whirlwind of plans, strategies, and contingencies. I needed allies. Real allies. People who weren't afraid of the network. People who were willing to fight. But who could I trust now? As I moved through the dark streets, I thought about Emily, the woman I had loved, the woman who had been by my side and who had betrayed me. I couldn't afford to waste energy thinking about her anymore. There was only one thing left. Take them down. The mastermind. I wasn't naive enough to think I could defeat the network alone. They were too vast, too organized, and too ingrained in every part of society. But what if I could get to the very core of it? The masterminds who ran the show. The ones who never showed their faces, who worked behind the scenes pulling strings, manipulating everything. I needed to find out who they were, and I needed to do it fast. That's when I thought of the only person who might be able to help me. The one person who knew the underbelly of the network better than anyone else. Victor. Victor was a former operative, one of the network's top agents. He had disappeared years ago after a botched mission, and no one had heard from him since. But if there was anyone who could expose the network's true leaders, it was him. He was the only one I knew who could potentially blow the lid off this whole thing. I had no idea where he was, but I had a feeling that if I found him, he would either help me or he would kill me. There would be no in-between, a dangerous alliance. It didn't take long for me to track Victor down. I had a contact, a former colleague of his who owed me a favor. Through a series of coded messages and covert exchanges, I finally learned his whereabouts. A rundown apartment in a dilapidated part of the city. The kind of place where no one would look for someone like him. I arrived at the building just as the sun was setting, the darkness creeping in. The alley behind the building was silent, the air thick with a sense of foreboding. I knocked on the door, my heart pounding in my chest. The door creaked open just a crack, and I saw a pair of eyes, cold, calculating and untrusting, staring back at me. "Alex." Victor's voice was low, dangerous. "I thought you were dead." I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "I need your help, Victor. I'm being hunted. The network, they want me gone, and I need to know everything. You know about them." Victor didn't say anything for a long moment. His eyes flickered to the street, scanning for any sign of danger. He didn't trust me, and I didn't blame him. "You're asking me to go up against them? You know how dangerous that is, right?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. He had been in the game long enough to understand the stakes. "I don't have a choice, Victor. I can't keep running. If I don't do something now, they'll come for me. And everyone I love." Victor studied me for a moment longer, then finally nodded. "All right. You've got my help. But know this, Alex. You're already in deeper than you realize. Once we start this, there's no turning back." I didn't flinch. I was already in too deep. The plan Victor's apartment was a far cry from the kind of places I was used to. It was bare, functional, with only the essentials. But it was clear that Victor had been living off the grid for years. Maps, dossiers, and old surveillance equipment were scattered across the room, a testament to his past. Victor pulled out a map of the city, marking out certain locations with small red pins. "This is where they've been moving. The network has a base here, a stronghold right in the heart of the city. It's under the radar, an old warehouse disguised as a shipping facility. They've been using it as a hub to move their operations around." I studied the map. It was a bold move. The network wasn't just hiding in the shadows anymore. They were expanding. "This is where we hit them," Victor said, his finger tracing a line on the map. "But we need to be careful. They won't go down without a fight." I nodded. "We don't need to take the whole network down at once. I just need the people at the top, the masterminds." Victor's eyes narrowed. "You don't get it, do you? You're already too close. If you go after them, there's no guarantee you'll make it out alive. This is a war, Alex. It's not just a simple mission. It's a matter of life or death." I looked at Victor, knowing he was right. The consequences of failure were real and deadly. "I'm ready." My voice was firm. There was no room for doubt now. "We do this, and we do it fast. They've already taken everything from me. Now it's my turn." My Brother's Darkest Secret, Part 22, The Final Showdown. The air between us crackled with tension, an invisible force that seemed to pull everything toward the breaking point. Liam stood there, his face cold, his eyes devoid of the brotherly warmth I had once believed to be there. "I knew you'd come for me," he said again, his voice quieter this time, almost calm. But there was something in his eyes, something sharp and calculating that sent a wave of icy dread through me. He wasn't the Liam I'd known. Not anymore. He was one of them now, a puppet master in the grand web of the network. I clenched, my fists. This was the moment. I couldn't hesitate. "This ends tonight, Liam," I said, my voice as steady as I could manage, despite the surge of emotion threatening to overwhelm me. He didn't move, just watched me with that distant, unreadable gaze. "You don't understand, Alex," he said, the faintest trace of pity in his tone. "You think you can bring all of this down. You think you can stop what we've built. But you're too late. The network isn't just a group of people, it's a system. It's everything. It's your legacy." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. My legacy. I had heard them before, from Emily, from Victor. But hearing them from Liam, it twisted something deep inside me. How long had they been playing me? How far back did this go? "No, Liam," I spat, stepping forward, anger fueling my steps. "I'm not your pawn anymore. I'm not part of this, and I never will be." Liam's lips curled into a thin smile, a smile that sent a cold shiver down my spine. "You were always part of it, Alex. You just never realized it." The betrayal revealed. Suddenly, the tension in the room shifted. The walls, once just silent, observers, seemed to press in around us. Liam's words felt heavier, each syllable a weight in the atmosphere. But it was Victor who broke the silence next, his voice low, dangerous. "You're wasting your time, Alex," he said, stepping forward, his eyes fixed on Liam. "You don't understand the magnitude of what you're up against." I turned. To him. But there was something in his eyes. Something new. Fear? No. It wasn't fear. It was something else. Regret. Victor's next words hit like a bolt of lightning. "Liam is right. You were always part of the network, whether you knew it or not." I stared at Victor, disbelief flooding my veins. "What the hell are you talking about?" I demanded. Victor exhaled, looking tired, almost as if the weight of his own conscience had become too much to bear. "You think the network is just some corrupt organization, don't you? A few bad actors pulling the strings behind the scenes? But it's more than that, Alex. It's been in your family for generations." I felt a sharp pain in my chest. This couldn't be true. My father, my uncle, my mother, I had thought they had been victims too. That they had been deceived just like me. But now, Victor was saying something else. Something darker. "Your father was one of the founding members. Your uncle too. And they groomed you, Alex. All these years, they were preparing you to take your place in the network." My heart pounded. This was madness. "No, this couldn't be true. You're lying." The words left my mouth in a harsh whisper, but deep down I wasn't sure anymore. Victor didn't respond, but the silence spoke louder than any words ever could. Liam's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "You were always meant to take my place. But you kept resisting it, kept thinking you were above it. But in the end, you're just like the rest of us." "I'm not like you," I snapped, fury boiling over. "I never was." Liam's eyes darkened. "Maybe not yet, but you will be. The final choice." Suddenly, a low rumble filled the room, and the lights flickered overhead. It was as if the very building itself had come alive, sensing the end was near. The door to the office creaked open, and I heard the sound of footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. The room seemed to close in on me. No way out. Liam, sensing my momentary distraction, moved with blinding speed. In an instant, he was standing right in front of me, his hand gripping my wrist in a vice-like hold. "You don't get it, do you, Alex?" he growled, his voice full of venom. "You've always been the key, the missing piece." I struggled against his grip, but his hold only tightened. The air was thick with tension. The entire network, my family, my past, my future, was closing in on me. I could feel the walls closing tighter, the weight of betrayal and lies suffocating me. Then I heard it, a sharp click. The sound of a gun being cocked. Victor was pointing a weapon at me. I turned to him, my heart skipping a beat. "Victor, what the hell are you doing?" But his expression was one I couldn't decipher. Cold, resigned. "I'm sorry, Alex," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the pounding in my chest. "This is the only way. You're too dangerous, too unpredictable. You've already torn down too much." I stared at him, a cold fury building inside me.